Well, greetings and salutations, and welcome once again to the Newsman Weekly Podcast, episode number 49. Thanks again to everybody for joining us today. We know you've got a lot of choices in this media-crazy world, and we're just glad that, doggone it, you choose to spend time with us each and every week. Thanks also to local country singer Luke Watson for what has become this show's theme song, Smoke and Drink. So, hey, my thanks also to the great folks at Relax It's Just Coffee for sponsoring this show. Every day just starts better with great coffee, and our friend Paul Kimmerling and his baristas at Relax simply have the best in town. So get over there today, get coffee, grab a fresh pastry from Blackbird Bakery located right inside the coffee shop. No better way to start your day, and please tell them the folks from the Newsman Weekly at Richland Source sent you. I am joined again today by Zac Hiser, the executive producer of the Newsman Weekly. Good morning, Zac.
Good morning.
And as I boldly predicted months and months ago, the Cleveland Cavaliers crashed and burned in spectacular fashion in just the second round of the NBA playoffs. So I'm certain now that you've finally given up on this woebegone franchise.
Okay. Did Indians fans give up from 1954 to 1995 when we didn't make the playoffs?
Every year they gave up.
Did
Every
Browns
year.
fans give up when the team left and then came back only to be just a disaster of professional sports?
Yeah, I think a lot of them have.
We don't give up.
No,
we don't
you
give
don't?
up on our teams in Cleveland, especially not 64-win teams that are still young and just had a bad series. It was ugly. It was ugly. And we sat here all year and we said, the season's going to be a bust if we don't win, at least make the Eastern Conference Finals. So sure, yeah, we can call it a bust, but I don't know. I still have hope for this core, this group. I don't think it's I don't think it's time to blow anything up yet. I mean, sure, you look at offers and you look at things that you can do, but it's tough to win in the NBA. It's tough to make the finals every year. I think Cleveland fans got spoiled with that when LeBron did it,
that 1 year
in and year out.
Yeah. My favorite part of the debacle that was the end to the Cleveland Cavaliers season was the text message that Max Strus sent out to his teammates before the final game, and he said, "Hey, if you don't believe, don't show up. Don't show up to work." And he then went like 0 for 9 from 3.
He didn't show up.
Yeah, so apparently he didn't believe.
Yeah. I knew that was going to be. It's like Game 5 was. You could see Mitchell kind of limping and being tentative. You could see Garland was in pain. It was an ugly way to go down. And I'm not blaming the injuries. There's more to it than that. And you give credit to the Indiana Pacers, who came and just took the opportunity.
And Zydrunas Ilgauskas was not walking through that door anytime
Big
soon.
Z is not walking through that door.
Hey, we're also joined again this morning by Knox Pages reporter Grant Ritchey, this show's videographer for at least one more week. I know I've said that every week, but folks, this time I mean it. Our friend Grant is leaving us at the end of the month, ladies and gentlemen, headed for greener pastures. I'm not exactly sure where those pastures might take him, but this, I believe, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, this is his final episode of the Newsman Weekly. Now, all kidding aside, I'm thankful we've had Grant with us during the past year when we launched this audiovisual clown car of a show. He's been a very good comedic foil for me. To those who have spoken to me about why am I so mean to Grant, well, first of all, it's easy. Second of all, he's a very good sport about it, and he's been willing to bear the brunt of many jokes, and he's always been a good sport through it all. So, Grant, final words of wisdom for us all, and give us any idea about what might come next.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. You'll be getting the invoices for my therapy bills, or I'll have to do after being on this podcast for a while.
I will put them with all of the other invoices that this show has compiled, and it'll be right over there in the circle.
Just on your neat and tidy desk.
Yeah. They'll be underneath the stack of city council agendas.
Yeah, looking for a journalism job out east still. Currently in the midst of applying and whatnot, so We'll be doing some freelancing and some side jobs until that happens.
So we'll
but
still see your byline on pages for a little while.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, for a bit.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, well, folks, we still have that to look forward to, and I will continue to mock Mr. Ritchie just as often as I can.
You can come back anytime to be our Carl's punching bag.
If he's feeling a little sad, he's like, you know what, it'll make me happy making fun of Grant.
Somebody get Ritchie in here. I need to.
We'll get him on the phone.
Yeah, I need my Bobo doll. You guys are way too young to remember Bobo dolls.
Yeah.
I
don't.
Yeah, there's like the inflatable clown type things, and you like punch them. And they go down and they spring back up. We called them Bobo dolls. Okay. Like a boing. Yeah. Anyway. Hey, folks, we do have another interesting and informative show for you today. In a few minutes, we'll be joined by Tara Lautzenhiser, the Executive Director of Richland County Children Services. Took over that job in early February. And she'll bring us up to speed with what's happening at Children's Services these days. So stay tuned for that. But before then, we do have some news to share with you. Mansfield resident Gary Jakubik recently completed his mission of visiting and photographing every monument and statue at the 6,000-acre Gettysburg battlefield in Pennsylvania, site of the bloodiest fight of the Civil War.
Okay.
Back in July of 1863.
Does that include every gravestone?
Not the gravestones, but every monument and statue.
Okay. Wow.
I had a great visit last week with Gary and his wife, Cindy. I worked with Cindy a long time ago in the newsroom at the Mansfield News-Journal. We published the story on Friday at Richland Source, which just happened to be Gary's 74th birthday. He is a 1969 graduate of St. Peter's High School here in Mansfield. He reached his goal back in April by finding and taking a photo of a small monument that was placed in honor of Brown's Battery B of the 1st Rhode Island Artillery. Have either of you ever been to the Gettysburg battlefield?
Yeah, I think I did when I was in middle school. We did that trip out there to D.C. and everything like that, and got to see it.
I don't think I've been. I'll blame my early childhood education and middle school. That should have been a field trip, you know?
Well, I mean, it's not a short trip, and you can't go there in a couple hours. It does take a little while.
Where is that in Pennsylvania?
It's closer to the eastern end of the state. I mean, it's I don't know, 5, 6, 7 hour drive, maybe. I'm not sure. It's 2 hours to Pittsburgh?
Yeah, it's like 3.
Yeah, then you have to go 2 or 3 hours east of that. But I went there for the first time a couple of years ago, and Grant, I don't remember what you remember about going there in middle school, but it is a sprawling battlefield. It has more monuments and statues, I believe, than any other national park. It is a national park now, than any other battlefield you ever see. Almost every unit that was there, their state posted or paid for at least one monument or statue, and most of the states in the Union at the time had folks participating there, including Ohio. Cool thing about Gettysburg and Gary Jakubik's story is, Gettysburg as a battle wasn't supposed to happen, or at least not there. If you think back to the summer of 1863, Lee's army moved up from the south. His goal was to find a place where he could engage the Union Army and destroy it and threaten Washington, D.C., and maybe bring it into the war. So his army had gone into Pennsylvania, the Army of Northern Virginia, and they had a infantry group that was out scouting, and they actually went into Gettysburg looking for things like shoes and boots and food, and they stumbled across a Union cavalry unit that was there at the time. Next thing you know, you ended up having a 3-day battle which had more than 50,000 casualties. So that battle actually took place by accident, at least started by accident. And interesting I found in talking with Gary is he was always interested in the Civil War and in history. His degree from Kent State was in history, but he didn't want to teach. So he was working in electronics sales, and there was a store that he was visiting in Columbus and was talking to the folks there about Gettysburg and the Civil War, and they said, hey, we got a guy in the stock room who's really interested in the Civil War. So that's how he met a guy named Wayne Motts. Wayne Motts had a degree, or was earning a degree from Ohio State in military history, and Wayne Motts went on to become a 35-year tour guide at Gettysburg, the head of the foundation, now famous Gettysburg historian Wayne Motts. So Gary's friendship with Wayne Motts almost came as by much of an accident as the battle itself. And it was a fun story to tell, and if you didn't get a chance to see it, I was pleased over the weekend when I looked to see how many people did take a look at it. So if you haven't had a chance to look, it was published Friday. Go ahead and take a look back.
So is he on a photography tour of other battlefields or historical sites, or just was it Gettysburg was kind of the big goal for him?
I think, when I asked him, his goal when he started was not to photograph everyone, but once he got started,
it's like might as well.
Yeah, but I mean, he's big into any, especially any Civil War battlefields. He's been to probably all of them, from Chancellorsville to Antietam to Fredericksburg, and when he was doing his sales jobs for different companies over the years, at one point he was repping. I think it was 81 H.H. Gregg stores in 7 different states. So he would do his sales calls during the week and try to end them by finishing up the day so he could get to Gettysburg by Friday.
Nice.
And spend the weekend there and get the company to pay for the hotel and some meals.
Nice.
And I think he's very much a journalist at heart when it comes to getting
smart.
the company to pay for your travel. But wonderful guy. He and Cindy have been together a long time and had a great time visiting with them. I also had the chance on Friday, speaking of that, to again participate in the crisis intervention team training for area law enforcement officers. It's a week-long training session that's done through NAMI Richland County and the Richland County Mental Health and Recovery Services Board. At the end of the week, a small group of us community theater actors, led by Mansfield Playhouse Artistic Director Doug Wirtz, we act out mental health scenarios that the men and women of law enforcement respond to, and use the tools they learned during the week to de-escalate and help provide assistance for people in crisis rather than make arrests and have to take people to jail. Nearly 700 local law enforcement officers over the years have graduated from this program since its inception. They do it twice a year, and this last Friday was the 34th graduating class in the program's history. And I know you guys were mocking me for a photograph that I wrote a column about this, which published on Sunday, and you're certainly welcome to poke fun at me and make fun of the old man.
Yeah, we'll put that link in the show notes, and you got to click on it just to at least see the lead picture. It's Carl just kind of cowering over what looks like a teddy bear at first, and it's a stack of newspapers actually, which is based on a real situation. So not to mock any sort of problems, but it's kind of a funny picture of Carl.
Well, yeah, all of the cases that we kind of act out were actual cases that I believe that the Richland County Sheriff's Office or the Mansfield Police Department have encountered over the years. And that particular one was a older gentleman who went into a convenience store and scooped up all of the newspapers and took them outside. And the folks working there called the police because the guy just stole all their newspapers, and he ends up sitting on like a bench outside, and in his mind, there's a conspiracy among some to poison the local reservoir, the drinking water. Oh. And in his mind, those folks are communicating through the newspapers.
Through like hidden messages?
Right. So he has to get the newspapers and prevent people from buying them and sharing. Okay. The information.
But these are just print newspapers, so Richland Source wouldn't do that. No.
But the thing is, in his mind, he's protecting the community. And in that particular scenario, I was talking with, the case was being handled by 2 Ashland County Sheriff's deputies. There's no scripts for these things. There's just, here's your scenario. So as an actor, you basically respond to what they say and do. And if they respond in a stressful or negative way, then you kind of, the situation escalates. These two deputies did a fantastic job. I didn't make it easy for them, but they did a fantastic job, and they ended up the gentleman that I was portraying was happy to get help.
Yeah, it's great acting by you as well. It looks like you're nearly shedding a tear over those newspapers.
Well, there might have been tears involved, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, it's a thing, and I'd like to thank the folks at NAMI Richland County, the Mental Health and Recovery Board Services folks, and Doug Wirtz over at the Playhouse for inviting me to come and participate in these things. Let's see what else we got here. A 17-year-old Mansfield teenager may be bound over for trial as an adult for the second time in just 3 months on homicide-related charges. Alleged homicides occurred just 6 months apart, according to court records. He was arraigned Tuesday in Richland County Juvenile Court on 8 new charges, ranging from aggravated murder to conspiracy to tampering with evidence and receiving stolen property, according to Juvenile Court Judge Steve McKinley. Those charges were filed May 2nd in Juvenile Court. Those stem from his alleged involvement in the October 10th, 2023 shooting death of Jason Andrikin. He was just 15 years old at the time. Now, that same juvenile was previously bound over by McKinley into adult court back in February on multiple charges, including reckless homicide and unlawful possession of a dangerous ordinance. He was 16 at the time of those alleged offenses, which occurred on April 3rd, 2024. At the time, the juvenile was indicted by a grand jury for reckless homicide. Prosecutors said in that case they didn't believe it was a purposeful killing and instead involved juveniles, quote-unquote, playing around with firearms, resulting in the death of a 16-year-old male. The juvenile is being held on a $1 million bond in the reckless homicide case. So a very sad and tragic story about a local teenager.
Now, can you try... Is that just, do judges have the ability to kind of use their discretion to try in certain cases 16, 17-year-olds as an adult?
It depends on, obviously it's going to be up to Judge McKinley. Most of the time it depends upon the severity of the case, of the charges, of the allegations. If it's a case that the judge believes can best be handled in juvenile court, obviously he or she will keep it there. Obviously, in this case, it's been bound over once before, for another homicide that was just 6 months after the first one. So, there's going to be a pretrial conference, I believe May 21st, that the attorneys for the young man and the prosecutor's office will talk about the case. If it goes forward from that point, there'll be another appearance before Judge McKinley, and he will make a decision at that point on whether or not this case will also be moving over to adult court for consideration. All right. Well, that's enough for now, unless Richie's got something else he wants to spout off about over there.
No, I don't think so, but thanks for asking.
You want to say something trashy about the Cavaliers or anything, or something about the about the 8 NFL teams that you're allegedly a fan of?
No, I'm kind of done with Darius Garland, though. I was a Darius Garland hater like 2 years ago, and then I kind of turned a corner.
Stopped.
And I never really stopped. Guy always chokes in the playoffs. He's injured, yeah, I understand that, but so was Donovan Mitchell, and he came out and still put on a great performance. So,
yeah, I'm pretty sure Darius Garland, if he continues to shoot like that, he's really going to need a union card. If you're going to lay that many bricks, you really got to be a part of the union. All right, that's enough for now. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be joined by Tara Lautzenhiser, the new executive director for Richland County Children Services. Please stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Newsman Weekly. We are now joined by Tara Lautzenhiser from Richland County Children Services. Tara, thanks for joining us today, and thanks for getting up so damn early.
Thanks for having me.
Now, on February 3rd, Tara took over as executive director of Richland County Children Services, but she certainly was not new to the Public Child Welfare Agency, having begun there back in 2008 as a caseworker, social worker, but working on cases. She earned her bachelor's degree from the Ohio State University. Why they continue to think they can claim they're the only ones that can use the word "the," as someone who graduated from the Ohio University. We were here first. She also has a master's degree in criminal justice with a concentration in forensic psychology from Tiffin University. Good morning, and thanks again for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Now, Tara, what were your biggest goals when you moved into the top seat in the agency? And the last few months, what have been the biggest challenges you've faced?
Some of the goals that I wanted to accomplish are getting to know my administrative staff. I sort of jumped. I wasn't the assistant director first, which is more common when you become director. So learning the administrative staff, the financial department, assistant director, and everyone a lot more closely, and get to know them. I wanted to listen to the staff. I wanted to change the culture a little bit, make it more, give everybody more of a voice, the staff a voice. There had been a survey done prior to me becoming director, and one of the things they wanted to have was more transparency, more involvement from the administrative offices back there. And so that's what I've really tried to work on a lot. We were changing program manuals and personnel manuals, and so having that input from staff and buy-in, being more transparent with them throughout the day. Definitely not one of those directors that are in the back office all day long. I like to be out front with people and help where I can, and so that's been one of my biggest accomplishments, I think, in just the first several months. Another goal that I had was I wanted, Children's Services has always been a part of a lot of community events, and but we've never really had events at our agency for the community. And so we have a couple of events coming up in the summertime that the community will be involved in. It's kind of us giving back to them. There'll be a lot of fun and games, and one of them's for foster parent recruitment, and the other one is just solely for the community. It'll be the first annual one that we'll hope to continue year after year. And another thing would be to just stay definitely in compliance with the state. We've, as the program manager prior to becoming director, I developed a lot of compliance incentives and ways to track so that we're in better compliance with the state and federal requirements, so that we make sure our investigations and ongoing cases are thorough and worked as best as possible. So to continue our high achievements in that as well.
Now, obviously those were goals, but that you anticipated coming in, but what are some of the challenges that maybe you didn't realize you were going to have when you slid into the big chair?
Yeah, some of the challenges that you don't really think about are definitely getting to know different personalities of staff and challenges in the community. Making sure that it's a big it's a big responsibility on your shoulders when you become director. It's making sure the staff and the community are working well together to maintain those partnerships. I would say the challenge is I didn't know a lot of the other directors in the community, and so getting to know them, immersing myself into their agencies as well has been a challenge, but rewarding at the same time.
Now, public child welfare is not an inexpensive proposition. 2024, I believe agency revenues were, according to the annual report, about $12.6 million, and expenditures were $13.5 million. Obviously, you'll have years where you spend more than you take in, but hopefully not a whole lot of those. So explain to the audience how the agency is funded through multiple sources. I know you get federal funds, you get local funds, and you get probably a limited amount of state funding. So how is that kind of divided up?
So our federal funds that we receive make up about 46%. Our state fund, like you said, are the smallest percentage, which is about 16.5% in 2024. And our local levies, which we rely heavily on as well, is about 36.5%.
Now, in terms of expenses, like any other business or agency, personnel costs are
Yes.
obviously the biggest expense. I think it was about 55% of your total expenditures in 2024. Your second biggest cost was placement services, which was about 36%. Kind of explain to people what goes into placement services and maybe talk about the fact, I believe it's not something you really have a whole lot of control over.
Right. Our placement services are really our foster care expenses, which is our one of the highest. And a lot goes into that. You know, especially over the last couple of years, placement costs have gone up with out-of-network homes, residential homes. One of the things people think is, you know, that we benefit from foster care, and we do not. We only get, if the child is 4E eligible, we only get about 60% back from federal funding.
Okay, you're going to have to back up for 1 second.
Okay.
You just used a phrase that I'm comfortable nobody out there understands. 4E eligible.
Yeah. So there's Title 4E funding. There's certain criteria for a child to eligible criteria, such as income from their family. They have to meet certain criteria, age, court orders, things like that. So if a child is 4E eligible, we do receive some funding back. But like I said, it's only about 60%. So we're still having to foot the other 30-some percent on top of that. And so that's where a lot of those placement services come from.
So I know one of the myths, and we talked a little bit about it before we went on the air here. One of the myths is that, you know, Children's Services wants to take your kids.
Yes.
And that talk a little bit about why that's a myth. I realize obviously funding is an issue, but it's not just funding. Talk about what you would rather see happen with a child when there's an issue in the home and you guys have to become involved.
Yeah, so one of the biggest myths is that, you know, Children's Services we wake up every day and try to figure out whose child we can take, and that is definitely the exact opposite of what we try to do. We first and foremost want to try to keep the family together. That is our number one goal. And we are quite creative sometimes. We can try to involve kinship members, family members, significant others that may be a part of that family's life, if they're involved in church, or we've had coaches and teachers step in to try and keep that family together first. So there are some counties where the kinship program may be not so big, and sometimes counties take custody and kind of look for kin afterwards. Richland County is the exact opposite. We will go to all lengths of the genogram, family genogram, to try and find somebody that's appropriate for the children if we do have to remove them out of the home first before seeking custody through juvenile court.
I believe that if grandparents, aunts, uncles, significant others, people who are involved in kinship, there's at least some temporary remuneration or assistance that grandma and grandpa can get, because obviously when you get to be my age, you're not really anticipating raising children again.
Right. So
maybe financially you think you're not ready for that. So I talk a little bit about the Kinship Navigator program and how that works. works?
Yeah, so there are funding that we can receive from state that the kinship providers can receive to help. We have kinship navigators at our agency. We have 2 of them that can assist the kinship providers with services and resources, on top of funding.
Now, your frontline troops kind of in the fight to keep children safe are your social workers, your caseworkers. I know you started out that way. What do these men and women do on a daily basis? What sorts of things do they have to deal with and see every day? And how valuable are they to a public child welfare agency?
They're definitely the most valuable of the child welfare agency. They are they're the ones that arrive first. Sometimes they're the first people that a child sees that can help save them from abuse or neglect that is occurring. Our intake investigators are the first on the scene. They're the ones that have to let the parents or caregivers know what the allegations are, and so oftentimes that's an intense process. But also they can figure out what's going on. Our ongoing workers who see the cases for a longer period of time develop those relationships with the family long term and the kiddos as well. But they work alongside those parents to get the family back together. And I think those caseworkers put their all into it. They cry, they worry every single day for their families that they're serving. And it is a true passion for them to help families.
I mean, this must be a tough gig because I see turnover is an issue. I think you've got some vacancies right now. So if somebody is looking to get into the child welfare field, we will have links to your website and things like that with the show notes. But how big a problem is it with turnover and burnout and the caseworkers having to deal with this just on a daily basis?
The turnout or the burnout is, it's high in every agency in child welfare throughout the country. It's a tough job. You have to have the ability to remember every single day why you're doing that job and not lose focus of that. Because the stories and the things that you see and hear and experience as a caseworker, that secondary trauma that a lot of them experience can weigh on you. And so I know for me as a caseworker, I spent most of my time in investigations. And, I think remembering why you're doing the job, remembering why you have a passion for it, and then also remembering to take care of yourself, to try your best to separate when you go home, have hobbies and things that you can do for yourself, helps prevent that burnout.
And I want you to think back to your time as an investigator. And I know there's all sorts of confidentiality rules and laws, and I would never ask you to give any names or anything, but is there one case in particular that sticks out in your mind, either man, why did I get into this job? I really didn't need this today. Or, wow, this turned out so well. Do you have one case that kind of that'll stick out in your mind forever?
Yeah, there's a couple of cases I think that that I'll always remember, and the reason that I remember those are the ones that I couldn't reach the parents to help enough to get the family back together. Those are the cases that I think you struggle with the most because you want to make a difference, you want to help them, you want to link them back together, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. So for those cases that, there's a couple in my mind that that I couldn't help. Felt like I couldn't help enough. And there are those cases that, I still see the parents out in the communities today that remember you and give you a hug even, and and I love them, too, because you felt like they're together, that you made a difference, you helped the situation, and those are the greatest.
Now, I'm throwing a couple of numbers, and these numbers kind of blow me away. Your screening department had or took in, 7,640 calls in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately investigated 1,120 child abuse investigations. And for those who can do the math, that's more than 3 a day, every day, 7 days a week for 365 days for things like neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional maltreatment, dependency. How does the intake process work? And when you guys take a call, kind of take us through how the process works.
Sure. So when someone calls into the agency, it goes to our screening department, and we have 3 screeners currently, and they type up all of the information that the referral source gives. Our referral sources are always remain confidential, so we are bound by law to not ever disclose who our referral source is. So it's so anybody calling in can feel safe in doing so. Once the screeners type up the referrals, we now have a process. It's called it's called Red Team. It's a team of the assistant director, and there's a supervisor, the screening supervisor, a caseworker, and a screener, and they kind of rotate every day in viewing all of the cases that have come in from 10 o'clock the day before. Obviously, if there's an emergent situation, those are screened right away. But this team of people get together and they look at the state guidelines and help in determining whether or not to screen in a case or screen out. So whether to take it as an investigation, does it meet those qualifications or criteria for state guidelines or not? And once a case is determined that, yes, it meets state guidelines for an investigation, then it goes to our intake investigations department.
Now, when those calls come in, can you just give us a couple of the criteria that you look at and say, okay, this meets the criteria or this doesn't? I mean, if I see, and I live in a neighborhood and I see a kid and maybe 2 or 3 years old and they're out by themselves and they're running around in the winter and they don't have any shoes on, maybe they're wearing a diaper, and I see this kind of thing and I say, you know what, something's wrong, and I call you guys. Give me some 2 or 3 of the criteria that you're looking for that would get a case screened in for an investigation.
Yeah, so first and foremost, we're looking for child, what is the child vulnerability, age, what does the situation look like as far as adult protective capacities. So in your example, the child is 2 or 3, unable, obviously, to know the rules of the road and laws, and able to put clothes on themselves, those types of things we're looking for. Now, if a child is 11 and somebody calls in with those same things, we most likely wouldn't screen that in.
Now, is it the number of calls that you get, is it primarily from the community? Is it school teachers? I know there's such a thing as mandatory reporters, people that have to call you. Where do the majority of your calls come from?
Our majority of the calls do come from mandated reporters. It's been pretty consistent over the last at least 5 or 6 years. About 60% of our calls that we get are from those mandated reporters, which are teachers, pediatrician, counseling, anybody that works professionally with children.
Yeah, I've kind of explained that a little bit. That's actually state law. So if you're a school teacher and you see or you suspect a child is being abused,
yes,
you don't get to make that decision on whether or not to call. If you suspect something, they have to call.
Correct. Yeah, that is the Ohio law, and we're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, if somebody can't call until after, business hours, we always have somebody available.
Now, I know the agency, when I was looking at your website, I think you have 3 full-time attorneys.
Yes.
That are working primarily in juvenile court. When and how do you guys get involved with juvenile court? And I believe the court has jurisdiction on child welfare cases. So talk about the relationship between Children's Services and Richland County Juvenile Court.
Yeah, so that was another one of my goals when I became the director, was to make sure that our relationship with juvenile court is strong, so that we have the same goal, which is to keep families together. But we do have to request juvenile court involvement if situations arise where we feel like we can't keep the child safe in their own home. And we can't find, if it's going to be a longer term process where a custody change is needed. And that doesn't necessarily mean Children's Services takes custody, but it could mean that we would ask for custody to a relative or to a significant other as well. But we do need juvenile court involvement to have any kind of court order. And I think that's another one of our myths in the community, is that Children's Services acts on their own and just is able to take custody when we feel it's necessary, and that's simply not true. We do have to request a hearing at juvenile court, and in juvenile court, the magistrates or the judge determines whether or not we have evidence to be able to take custody or to request custody to a relative or someone else.
How many children do you currently have? When I say currently, it could be it could be last week. I'm not asking you like up to the moment.
Yeah.
But how many children are actually in agency custody right now?
Right now we have 143.
And how many licensed foster homes do you guys oversee in Richland County?
So we, in our agency, we only have about 55 foster homes currently.
So again, journalists doing math, you have more children than you have foster homes. So yes. If you can't place a child in a local foster home, where do they go?
So if we can't place them in one of our local foster homes, they have to go out of network, which means they could be as far as Dayton, Ohio. We have a couple in Youngstown, Ohio. Sometimes they go into residential treatment facilities, which is not like a home at all. So unfortunately, they go elsewhere.
And these are children who not only are they removed from their homes at that point, but they're also removed from the school maybe that they were attending, and now they're in a completely different community, uprooted and sent to a different school. So I know one of the things we're going to talk about is upcoming events, but while we're on the topic, obviously there is a need for foster parents, more and additional foster parents. How does someone become a foster parent in Richland County with you guys?
Yeah, so all they need to do is either go on our website or give us a call, and we can send them information on what that looks like as far as classes. I think all of our classes currently, foster care classes, training classes to become a foster parent, are virtual, so it makes it convenient for them. They have a home study that needs done on their home, and they work alongside a foster care worker. So there's somebody with them that's their own worker that kind of walks them through step by step of the whole process. So it's not difficult. I know a lot of people think that, in order to become a foster parent, you have to, look like or, the perfect family, and that's not it at all. You can be a single parent. You can have had a divorce. You can have had history with the agency, as a child. Obviously there are criteria criminal-wise and stuff like that you can't have, or involvement with the agency as a perpetrator and things like that. But for the most part, kids really just need somebody that has a passion for taking another child in and raising them as their own, and hopefully adopting, if they can't return to their family.
And from a fiscal standpoint, it's obviously more expensive if you have to place a child out of network or in a different community, because obviously now you've got more travel time for your caseworkers because they have to go to Dayton, they have to go to Youngstown, they have to go to these out of the area. So from a fiscal standpoint, it makes more sense to have local more local foster families.
Definitely, yeah. The more I know that it's not just a county-wide, but statewide and federal, national crisis. And the prices, for those residential treatment facilities are, have skyrocketed. So it would be nice just for the children to be able to be in their own community, be in their own school, be able to go to school with, their friends that they knew, rather than sending them so far away.
How big a deal, or is probably the biggest problem, but I'll let you assess it and tell me. In terms of drugs in the home and parental drug usage and drug abuse, is that kind of the number one driver behind all of this?
Yeah, I would say substance use is the biggest. We've started drug testing some of the children who have come from substance use homes, and we drug tested about 300 kids last year, and 60% of those were positive. I think that the THC becoming so readily available now, parents have to realize that although it's legal for them, it's still not for the consumption of a child. And so children have gotten into gummies or things left out on the tables, but not even THC, but we're seeing, babies and kids testing positive for fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, really anything that the parent uses, because there's that residue. If something gets dropped on the floor and a toddler is crawling around and puts their hands in their mouth, they've ingested that drug. So our physical abuse and investigations last year were higher than our neglect, which is rare because neglect is always our biggest. But the reason I believe that is not so much of the physical abuse with, physical harm as far as hitting or things like that, but because of those kids testing positive for drugs. We take those as physical abuse cases.
Now, are you seeing, and I don't know the answer to this question, but are you seeing times where babies are actually being born drug addicted or having drugs at the time that they're born?
Yes. A lot of our positive tox, the majority of our positive tox screens do come from children who are born positive. So if mom uses at all during at least from 3 months on, it will show up. And this harder the drug, so fentanyl or meth or cocaine, those withdrawal symptoms from that for the baby are so significant. They, sometimes require morphine drips for days in the hospital. They have feeding issues. They can't sleep. They jerk. It's very sad when you see a baby that's born positive.
Well, obviously parents do have some rights, though. So what are the rights of parents when the caseworker shows up at the door? How much time do you guys spend going over those rights with the parents and explaining their rights and also their responsibilities?
So we give, anytime we show up at a home for the first time, we do give, it's called client rights packet that we give to our families. And it goes over all of the things like, they have a right to know what the allegations are. They have a right to be involved in the process to work on things with a case plan per se, if it goes to ongoing. They have the right to know, if we're taking something to court or, they don't lose any parental rights at all unless those are terminated through court. That's a long process.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things that does happen if you guys end up having to take custody and it becomes a long-term thing. You guys also do adoption. So talk a little bit about the adoption process. How many kids did you actually get successfully adopted last year, and how does that work?
So if usually around 2 years, could be earlier than that, but 2 years is usually the timeline for parents to either be able to create an environment where their children can come back, but if not, then we seek for permanent custody, which means that we'll terminate the parental rights, and then we do seek adoption for those kiddos. Last year we had 31 adoptions in 2024, which is great. Not enough, but great. And so our foster care, we have adoption workers as well. So once the agency receives permanent custody, then it goes to an adoption worker. Throughout custody, though, if we have custody, our teenagers, although they're in the agency custody, we have an independent living, Mary Steffen, who works with our teens and teaching them how to function in adult life, teaches them to cook, how to balance a checkbook, gets them their state ID or their driver's license, things like that, basic necessities that they're going to need to know when they do become an adult.
Now, you mentioned earlier, and this will be the time we'll talk about it, upcoming events. I mean, how important to the work that you guys do is the public face that you present to the community? And if you do have upcoming events you want to talk about, let's do that now. Yeah,
so on June 11th, from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. at our agency at 731 Shoal Road, we're going to be doing a foster parent recruitment event. And we haven't done any recruitment events in a while, so I'm very excited about this. So any foster families or anybody interested in becoming a foster parent, we're encouraging our foster parents now to bring somebody with them that may be interested in becoming a foster parent to come. Bring the kids. We're going to have free food, games, prizes. We've had a lot of support from the Y. They're gonna have some prizes as well. Home Depot, ABC Warehouse, and it has some gifts. So they can come out, they can fill out an inquiry, which gets them started on the process. And we're going to have a band. The Oolong Gurus will be there. So we hope to have a good turnout for that, June 11th. And then on July 31st, we're going to have our first annual RCCS Summer Days event, and that is open just to the community. It's sort of a give back from us. We're going to have music and food trucks. There's going to be games. We're going to have some of the area high school athletes come and help do some of those games with the kids. So we're hoping for a great turnout, and hope to have everybody there from the community.
Well, very good. I appreciate you very much, folks. We're going to wrap up today's show on that note. Many thanks to Tara Lautzenhiser from Richland County Children Services for joining us today. Before we sign off, I do have a couple of programming notes. We're not going to have a show next week as we observe the Memorial Day holiday, a day set aside to honor men and women who've died during the service of their country. Our guest on June 3rd will be Bob Ball, the chief investigator for the Richland County Coroner's Office. But for now, thanks again to all of you for listening to the Newsman Weekly. I'll be back in a second to put a bow on this week's show. But until then, remember what Mark Twain said. If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything.